Welcome to the Police Federal Credit Union of Omaha Blue Family News Series. It's our question and answer series, our second one here in February of 2021. I'm Ken Bader. I am the CEO and founder of the Police Officers Credit Union Association, and I have the great privilege of working with Police Federal Credit Union of Omaha and bringing an expert to you once per month. We have some folks here, of course, from Police Federal of Omaha, who brings us this series. So I can't say enough good things about them. And I also can't say enough good things about Sean Wyman. He is the CEO and co-founder of Going Beyond the Call, which provides very necessary trauma services for first responders. Just as important, he is an active police officer in the Tallahassee, Florida area, and I can't show enough appreciation for all that you do, Sean, in this time of COVID and unrest. And I can go on and on, but Sean, it's great to have you here, man.
Hey, thank you so much, Ken. It's an honor to be here.
Tell our audience a little bit about Going Beyond the Call, what you do for first responders, and really what was the motivation behind starting that organization?
Well, first, I want to thank you and everybody for the opportunity to be here today. It is an absolute honor, especially to be able to share about Going Beyond the Call. So Going Beyond the Call really focuses on the education and awareness side of what we do in law enforcement. It focuses on the mitigation, the understanding, the awareness, and legitimate strategies that really work to help you build and improve upon your mental fitness, which is something that is so ignored today. And unfortunately, the motivation behind doing something like this was because as a trainer for over 19 years, coming to the realization that the high liability topics that we teach, to include firearms, driving, and of course, defensive tactics, even though those are high liabilities, and even though those entities are situations where we end up with a lot of in the line of duty deaths, unfortunately, they're not the ones that kill us the most. The ones that kill us the most are, we basically kill ourselves by our own hand far more than anything else that we train for that could kill us. And when I recognized that and realized that, I decided I wanted to create a response to that wasn't okay for me. And I began to ask questions. Why is mental health not considered a high liability? If we're killing ourselves more, and statistically since 2016, that's been the status quo across the country, then why are we not addressing that? Why are we not making that a bigger conversation? Why are we not training our law enforcement today and their families to have a better understanding of the social emotional aspects of the job, which is really 90% of what we do?
One other question before I open it up to our group here. Going Beyond the Call encompasses the psychological, physiological, and relationship impacts common to public safety professionals. And yes, I am reading this because this is this is so complex. I've got to read it this early in the morning with only one cup of coffee.
I'm like, wait a minute, I've heard that before.
Yes, I deliberately took it off your website so I would get it right. But you do that both on and off the job. So tell us how this program improves community interactions, because that's something we definitely need right now. Mental health, wellness, employment success, which I think is also critical, and also personal relationships, because I know sometimes that is where the real problem starts, is at
Sure.
home and not necessarily on the job. So take that one for us, Sean. That should give you a good 20 minutes.
Easily, man. We got to focus on three key components. You got to focus on the individual officer themselves, right? You got to focus on them because they need to understand what they're getting into before they get into it. They need to understand that there is a social emotional aspect to this, that it's not just about catching bad guys and putting them in jail, that it's about dealing with parents that are giving up on their children. It's about women that have been beaten over and over again, and they've gone into these relationships because in the past they saw their mother go through the same thing. It's about, teaching them the cycle of trauma and all the different aspects of trauma and all the different types of trauma, so that they really have a better understanding of that. When they have that, that's going to create the second one, which is the organizational structure, right? That automatically improves the understanding and the awareness from an individual level to an organizational level. From an organizational standpoint, if they're not looking at the dollars, which we all know every city budget, every state budget, every county budget, every federal budget is always looking at what? The numbers.
Right.
Ask yourself, how much money are we spending every time a police officer takes a mental health day, takes a day off, and there's no rhyme or reason behind it, right? They just like, hey, you know what? I just need a day off. I'm not coming in today, right? How much does that cost over the long term, right? Mm-hmm. How much does it cost to train a police officer from the beginning to the time that they get into a police car solo on their own? And how much money are we losing by not maintaining retention of that officer, and that officer not even going to another agency? That officer is going back to private sector because they're like, hey, forget this, man. I can make more money and deal with less headaches and still serve in a capacity, and I don't have to go through all this. So retention, right? Being able to maintain. And then from a community aspect, looking at it from a community aspect, look, when we have a better understanding of the people that we're interacting with, and more importantly, the trauma and the social emotional aspects of what they've dealt with from their past and how their past carries over, and how we recognize how our past can carry over, and we begin to have a better understanding of, the way that we communicate with people really does matter, and the way that we act around people and our body language and all of those things play a role in whether our force escalates or de-escalates. From the moment you pull up in that patrol car, it begins. They're assessing you, they're analyzing you, they're subconsciously going, can I trust this person? Do I want to trust this person? I don't like police. Whatever the case may be, I don't like his attitude. As soon as he got out of the car, he slammed the car door, right? It could be something as simple as that. Or the structure of our tone, our tonality as we're speaking with people, and they go, they're speaking with me like my mom speaks to me. I don't like that, right? So
depends on your mom.
Right. Well, really, but seriously, think about that, right? A lot of the people that we deal with have already faced a lot of adverse experiences from their past, from their childhood. And when we understand the ACE aspect, or adverse childhood experience aspect of the past, and how that carries over into what we do, because you think about it, right? When we show up, people are at their worst and they expect us to be our best. Yeah. So what happens when we get on the job and we haven't dealt with our own past, and now we're showing up, right? And I'm the perfect example of that. 27 years old, getting started on the job, 8 years of military experience before that. And here I am, I'm showing up when people expect me to be at my best. I hate my mother. I'm $150,000 in debt. I never dealt with the fact that I premeditated the murder and almost went through to the point of execution of murdering my stepfather. Never dealt with the fact that I was in multiple foster homes and group homes. Never dealt with the fact that I was an alcoholic at the age of 12 till I was 27. I mean, never dealt with those things. Now I'm showing up and I'm expected to be at my best when they're at their worst. And that's what was showing up.
Yeah.
And when I realize that now, when I go back and I reflect upon that, I go, man, I got into this job because I wanted to help people. And I ended up hurting more people unconsciously because I didn't realize how important it was to address my past so that I could really move forward in my future. And it wasn't until I recognized that and really went back and dealt with my past that I was able to move forward and be able to have the recognition and the need and the demand, the silent demand for this aspect of our training, that we still less than 20% of agencies across the country are getting any training focused on their own mental wellness. There's a huge problem with that. especially when we know since 2016, we've been killing ourselves more than anything else that we've been focusing on that's considered a high liability.
Yeah, a lot of stuff there, Sean, and I certainly know your story and how far you've come back from. If you're still $150,000 in debt, by the way,
I'm
I
not.
know some folks here
Well,
at
I'm
Police
legally.
Federal Credit Union of Omaha that might be able to help you
I'm sure. I'm sure.
if you become a police officer in Nebraska, Iowa, or South Dakota instead of Florida. But by the way, anybody in the audience that has a question, I'm about to open it up if anybody does have a question. But as I ask this, feel free if you want to ask via the chat. You could also use that function. I will ask Sean your question. But very quickly, I understand what you're saying is somebody that isn't a police officer personally, but is staunchly supportive of law enforcement. Yeah, I remember a situation which I won't get into greatly, but somebody that was at a restaurant, it was an officer that was just about to go on duty. He was in full uniform, having a Diet Coke and some Italian food. My wife and I said hello to him and said thank you because we do support law enforcement. And we could tell that he was close to retirement because he mentioned it later in the conversation, and he was really, really angry. He was
Yeah.
angry about so many things. And, my wife, who's in healthcare, and I were sitting there talking and going, all right, now, I feel for this guy, but now, as to your point, he's not at his best, and he
That's right.
hasn't even started his shift. And, something needs to be done with that.
That's right.
So as I open it up to questions in just a minute, to get on a positive end, can you give us, because I know you do so much great work, can you give us a success story or a great example of how you've taken a first responder or a group of first responders to, this is esoteric, but to a better place, we'll say.
Sure. Well, we have had many testimonials that have been coming out on social media from people reading our book called Going Beyond the Call, Mental Fitness for Public Safety, who have said that it actually saved their life because when they read that book and they began to recognize what we were talking about and realize that that's what they were going through, that gave them the inspiration to go seek help. And that's what this is really about. It's a journey to go back and reprogram the people that have been programmed a certain way to say, well, you know what, I just have to suck it up and drive on because that's just the way it is. We've got to go back and reprogram that to say, no, man, it's okay to not be okay. You are going to go through these things. You are human. You are going to hurt. You are going to have feelings. You are going to have emotions. You are going to have opinions about things. And you need to address those things. And then for these brand new ones that are coming in, we need to train them correctly right out of the gate to recognize, realize, and have a proper response so that they don't re-traumatize themselves and they don't re-traumatize their communities that they're going out and they're serving.
Right. Any questions from our group here? I want to open it up for questions for Sean. Mary, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Okay, well, and some of it's more of just a statement of, I think that what you're doing is wonderful. The more we can remove the stigma of needing mental health care, the better, because that's such an issue. Is there anything that you can say to family members or support staff of law enforcement, guidance to say, how do we recognize these things? How do we help our law enforcement professional to seek the help that they need?
Mary, I'm so
Great
glad
question.
because I realized that that's something that I really didn't focus on at the beginning. So thank you for giving me that opportunity. I appreciate it. So the question or the question is, what can spouses, significant others, or just people in the communities that recognize, like Ken, when he recognized that officer was in a place of needing some assistance, right? What does that look like? Well, first of all, the key word is training. When these officers are coming in, their significant others should be coming in and receiving this training with them. They should be doing these things together so that they both have an understanding from the very beginning. Because one of the big issues, and I remember 20 years ago or 21 years ago now, when I started the academy, and they talked about how we had a high divorce rate, right? That was 21 years ago. We still have one of the highest divorce rates in the country today. Why? Because we don't prepare the spouses and significant others and even children of our law enforcement officers for what is to come. Again, preparation leads to preservation, procrastination leads to devastation, and unfortunately that's why we have such a devastated organization structure right now, because we have not prepared our officers and their families accordingly. Now, what are some things that they can do? They can go out and they can get educated on their own. And unfortunately, that is the best way right now, because a lot of organizations, law enforcement, firefighters, EMS, corrections, I mean, all of them, they don't provide this training. They don't even realize that they really need this training. So it's hard to give something that you don't even understand or realize that you really need to give. That's why Going Beyond the Call was created, to get this message out there and start educating entities and getting support to bring this message and create clarification, so that we can educate our spouses and significant others of these men and women that dedicate their lives. And they go out day in and day out, they dedicate their lives, and then they go back and they end up devastating their families. While they're trying to help other families, they devastate their own. And it's a tragic thing. So we need to do a better job on the front end of educating. Now, for those that are already in, we need to have retreats. We need to have resources, where classes, whatever you want to have, where they come in and you teach them. You go, hey, look, this is what's going on in law enforcement today. These are the stressors. This is the trauma most likely that your spouse or significant other is dealing with on the job, right? Chances are they're carrying that trauma over to off the job. And you don't even have to go into, if your husband or your wife or whatever is going through these things, because they begin to recognize it as you're doing the classes. And then they come to you and they go, you know what? I've been seeing these things. What can we do? Now we can pull in all these amazing resources that have been out there for a long time that nobody's really utilizing, because they don't even know that they exist. They don't really understand them. We can start pulling those resources together, but it starts with the education and preparation on the front end. Thank you for that awesome question. That was a great question.
Yeah, that's an awesome question. So, when COVID ends, are you going to do anything in Nebraska, Iowa, or South Dakota, or is it just too damn cold there?
No, I would come there in a heartbeat. Look, this is the way I look at it. Anyone that is ready to take this next step and move forward with this, I'm ready to go. We have training, we have the books, we have everything. We're ready. It's just a matter of getting someone to say, hey, you know what? We want to see what you got. We want to see what you can do. We want to see, how you can improve the mental wellness of our officers, and do it in a way that isn't intrusive or uncomfortable. And that's the advantage that I have, is that I'm not just somebody from the outside looking in. I'm somebody from the inside that's been there, done that. I've seen a lot of tragedy. I've seen a lot of devastation. I've gone through a lot of faced my own personal demons as well as professional ones, and really have a good grasp and a good understanding of that. So I can really stand in front of people and have that conversation intimately and respectfully, and be able to get their attention. And we've proven it over and over again. We've done several classes that have been very successful here in Florida. But again, unfortunately, as in most states, this is not the high priority. And I don't understand it, man. I don't get it. It's frustrating to me. And, we keep asking the question, when will this, how many law enforcement officers have to give their life sacrificially before this does become a priority? Is it 200? Is it 300? Is it 500? Is it 1,000? Like where does the number where all of a sudden we go, oh, wait a minute, we need to do something? Because unfortunately, it's just not a top conversation right now.
Yeah, I can tell you really don't have a lot of passion for this, Sean.
No, none. None.
It's 7:30 or actually 8 o'clock in the morning here in California, and I'm up and ready to go because of your energy, man.
I appreciate
Um,
that.
it sounds like to me that this is one actionable step for law enforcement and their families, to take care of themselves during this time. Even with some of the rhetoric that's out there.
Yeah.
Is that a good way of putting it, or am I way off base on that?
No, I think you're on point, man. I think unfortunately, what you don't know, you just don't know, right? And you end up what they call unconsciously incompetent. You just don't know,
Yeah.
right? And then you get to that point where you're consciously incompetent, meaning you know, but you're not going to do anything about it because you're like, well, I'm going to wait and see what somebody else does, right?
Hmm.
We at least need to get to a point where we're consciously competent, meaning, okay, yeah, we recognize these statistics, and we're ready to start doing something. Let's take an action step. Will it be the best? I don't know, but we got to do
Yeah.
something, right? Because already this year, I think we're 21 or 20. I think it might be even 24. It was 21 in January. 21 law enforcement officers had already taken their own life in January.
Hmm.
That's that's unacceptable, man. And it's preventable. That's the frustrating part about this whole thing, guys. This is preventable. It's not stoppable. We can't stop it, but we can definitely create better preventable measures in order to start reducing it. And the only way that we can do that is through good education and creating awareness on the front end. And if we do that, then as these young men and women come into the profession and they move up in the ranks and they become administrators, this will naturally become an evolution of health and wellness because they'll go, hey, I remember what was taught to me and I realize how important that is. And I recognize how important it's going to be in the future. I'm going to create this. This is going to go into our policies. This is going to go into our procedures. This is going to become part of our training. We're going to we're not just going to be trauma informed. We're going to implement a trauma informed strategy that teaches our officers and their spouses and significant others and their administrative staff and their court systems and their legal systems to have a better understanding and awareness of how trauma affects the human that we
Hmm.
interact with day in and day out, and how that plays into the way that we go out and serve in a law enforcement capacity.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You offer quite a bit of insight in service, and it goes very deep. But if there is maybe one number one tip for law enforcement in Nebraska, in Iowa, in South Dakota, that you could share if they're struggling, whether it's through all of the COVID insanity or some of the unrest, or just simply, yeah, the details in the I'm not using the right word, but the deepness of the job, I'll say. Is there maybe a number one tip that you can share that, hey, you know what, if you do this, you'll be just a little bit better?
I would say, first of all, is establishing recognition, recognizing that, you know what, this stuff it does hurt and it is painful. And I have seen some really bad things, and it wouldn't hurt me to go have a conversation with somebody. And
Mhm.
look, here's the other thing, right? You do not have to go through your agency. And I know a lot of agencies would be upset to hear that, but it's the truth, man. There are a lot of amazing resources outside of your organization that you can go to privately, some of them anonymously, that you can pick up the phone, call them, talk to them, and say, hey, I'm an officer in South Dakota. I've been on the job. Da, 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 da. I want to talk to somebody about something that I need to address, that I need to deal with, right? And you can have that conversation. There are organizations out there. There are apps out there. One of the apps that I recently just started, and I'm not selling this app or anything
Sure.
like that. So please,
Just a resource.
but it's called REL8, like relate,
Mm.
REL8. It's a really cool app, and it's a place where you can go and there's different topic threads, and you can
Mhm.
select that topic thread and you can have conversations with men and women across the country, remain anonymous, and sometimes just talking, just having a conversation about something that you've been holding up inside can help you to just start to slowly start to release that out. The other thing I would say is that if you're just getting started on the job and your agency does not offer any form of mental wellness training, find something. Look through
Mhm.
your state, see if there's something out there. Education, educate yourself, man. 90% of what you're going to do is social emotional.
Mhm.
10% of what you're going to do is getting gunfights, pursuits, and fights. That's just a fact statistically across the country. Okay. I don't care what agency you work for, statistically, 90% of the time you're going to deal with people's social emotional problems. So you better have a better understanding of how to address those. And more importantly, how to not get caught up in that emotion and pull it into your subconscious unnecessarily. And again, man, knowledge is power.
Yeah.
Education and awareness is the key to beginning your career and having a very successful one. So when you meet a guy like Ken and you're in your 20 something year and he asks you how you doing, you can have a smile on your face
Yeah.
and still be proud of what you represent and what you serve, because when you got started there was a meaning, there was a purpose, and there was a definition behind why you did what you did. Don't be like a lot of people that are hanging on to the tightrope at the very end, holding on for dear life, just praying to God that they can get through it. Be happy, be, proud of what you represent. Still carry on what you carried on when you got started. If you can carry that all the way through, you're going to have an amazing successful career.
Yeah. Yeah. Great tips. Really, really appreciate what you're doing, Sean. Before I wrap this up, Mary, you had a comment or a question, so please go ahead.
I just wanted to thank Sean for his time today. As a financial institution, um, you see people's spending habits, and obviously you recognize when there are certain problems going on or when somebody needs help. And so we felt that we had some responsibility in helping bring this awareness forward. And I appreciate you helping us with that.
Well, thank you, Mary. That's another thing that we really need to do on the front end. We need to teach our officers about finances and budgeting and building the proper retirement fund and how to allocate those funds. So I really appreciate what you guys do too, because it's very, very important and very needed to because that's another stress. That's another
Mhm.
issue for relationships. Money is the biggest problem, right? Usually when there's a problem or a disconnect in a relationship, money is usually the key to that. So being able to have a good budget, being able to have good financial sense and do those things. I wish I would have had that at 27. I had to scrape and figure it out on my own, and I got myself out of that debt. But having experts that can teach you the right way to do that and not have to stress out, that's an amazing thing. So thank you for what every single one of you guys do. I appreciate you guys as well.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, and to anybody that may be watching this recording later on, yeah, given what Sean just said, I keep remembering a conversation I had with another friend of ours, another Sean Douglas, who I know Sean Wyman
Yeah,
knows. Yeah,
I know Sean.
he does a podcast called Life Transformation Radio. He's in the Air Force right now and is a suicide survivor. And I remember asking him, for somebody that literally did have a very close call to ending his life, what he would suggest. And he said, reach out to somebody. If you're feeling like that, if you're in that place, reach out to somebody. Whether it's a spouse or a friend or your partner, or as you mentioned, there are programs out there, whether it's Real 8 or Serve and Protect, which I've talked about quite a bit. They have a 24/7 hotline and it's anonymous. Reach out to somebody, because I guarantee you, there's somebody out there, and more than just one somebody that's there to help. Sean, Last question for any of the folks here and any of the folks that are watching the recording. How can they find Going Beyond the Call? How can they get in touch with you and your team to bring the program to them, or to find some of those resources?
Sure. So there's a couple of ways. We have gbtc911.com, which is just a real simple information site where you can go and get general information. You can find our contact information there. If you would like to get the educational piece through the book, you can go to gbtcbook.com. That takes you right to the Amazon link, and you can go in there and you can get the book. The book has been half off now since COVID started, and we plan to keep it at that price point until until we deem, that we can move it back up and people are back at a normal state. But right now we feel like people really need to get this book in their hands. So we wanted to get it down there to the most reasonable price that we could. So we did that. And of course, you can reach out to us through social media. You can Google me and you can find me on there as well. So a lot of great ways to reach out. We also have a Facebook page for Going Beyond the Call, and we have a really cool LinkedIn group page as well. So come join us and network with some other amazing people that are also interested in not only improving their mental health, but helping to get the word out and help others.
Yeah. Yeah, great resources. Yeah, now that I know about the LinkedIn group, I'm gonna have to check that out. But Sean, I can't even go beyond the call to tell you
Oh, come
how much
on.
how much I really appreciate you taking some time out of your day off to share some of this insight and give us this information, man. I really appreciate it.
Well, I really appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity, and I hope that you guys will go out there and be voices and share what you heard today. And if, like I said, man, if there's a door that can open where we can come over there and support you guys and work with the men and women over there. And look, it's not just law enforcement, okay? It's firefighters, it's
Right.
EMS, it's corrections, it's dispatchers. I mean, there's a lot of, we can customize this to any of those entities, and even anything outside of that as well. Anybody that deals with high stress or trauma in their job or interacting with people on a regular basis, we can customize this type of training for. So we would love the opportunity, and if you guys could open a door or help us to get a door open, we would greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Sean, that people should realize that Police Federal Credit Union of Omaha certainly does serve police and their families, but also serves FBI, corrections officers, and a lot of the other brave professions that you talked about, Sean. So, Sean, thank you again. Thank you to Police Federal Credit Union of Omaha for bringing this Blue Family News series, the Q&A series. And thank you for all of you watching this recording. And we plan to be back next month with another great topic and another great expert. Take care. Thank you for watching the Blue Family News Q&A series brought to you by the Police Federal Credit Union of Omaha. Learn more about our expert guest, Sean Wyman, and his organization at gbtc911.com. To learn more about Police Federal Credit Union of Omaha, go to opfcu.net.